कितने पैसे चाहिए?
पैसा नहीं, इज्जत। मोहल्ले के चिरकुट लौंडे हरा रहे हैं फैंटेसी स्पोर्ट्स में। आप एक्सपर्ट हो, सिखाओ।
सिखाऊंगा तो जाने दोगे?
फैंटेसी स्पोर्ट्स का
असली अखाड़ा।
इस गेम में वित्तीय जोखिम के तत्व हैं और इसकी लत लग सकती है। कृपया जिम्मेदारी से और अपने जोखिम पर खेलें।
Hello and welcome to the Outside View presented by Fantasy Akhada. So India has won the first game, the first ODI against Sri Lanka. So the formats have changed, but it seems that the scripts aren't quite changed when it comes to Sri Lanka and India facing each other. And to discuss this first match, I have alongside me our experts, Thirushkamini and Onisha Ghosh. Welcome both of you. A good game of cricket from both the sides. So first, let's get to India's batting. So before we start talking about it, we have scorecard to look to, so as to have a look on how the batting proceedings have went forward when it comes to India. Shafali Verma at the top. We had a word about her in the mid-show as well. Thirush put that in perspective for us that she has a lot to offer for Team India, and there comes a knock of 35 runs from her. A very responsible knock, we would say. Captain Harmanpreets Kaur then holding the fort of the side, 44 runs, along with a good partnership. There it was between Harleen and Harmanpreet Kaur. Harleen of course, contributing those 34 runs. Deepti Sharma 22, and at the end, Pooja Vastrakar finishing the proceedings in style for Team India. But as we look at the scorecard, the first thing that comes to our mind probably is the depth in India's batting unit, and that today has come to their rescue, Thirush.
Certainly, on paper, we are a very good team with the kind of batting depth that we have. We even noticed that until Pooja Vastrakar, we did have batters who could come and chip in and get us through the line. But the area of concern is the top order of our team are not making the kind of runs that we'd expect them to. And a little unfortunate that Smriti was not able to make the kind of runs that I was talking about it in the mid show that we would expect a lot from Smriti. And also right after that, Yastika was an area of concern, Richa. So the players who you'd expect a lot haven't performed today. So that could be slightly a concerning area for the Indian team at this point.
So though India has ended on the winning side, of course, as Thirush said, that there have been a little bit of concern there. So far, the four batting innings that we've seen from India in this series against Sri Lanka, we've seen that the performances have come in patches. We haven't yet witnessed a 50 coming in from any of those batters. And if a number 8 batter, Deepti Sharma, coming in at that position, if we depend on probably those players to get you to the finish line, it kind of tells us that there's a little bit of concern there, Onisha, heading forward.
Yeah, it does come across as though the Indian batters are trying to feel for the contours of the spin they're facing, which is so unusual of a team from the subcontinent because these are not unfamiliar conditions to the Indian side. As Jemima Rodriguez mentioned in one of the earlier matches, it felt like she was batting on one of the Mumbai pitches in at the start of the T20I series. But if you look at India's scores, even in the T20I leg of this tour, they lost 5, 6, 7 wickets for just 130 odd runs on an average, which is quite disappointing from a team which has so many high profile and high potential players like Smriti Mandana, even Shifali Verma seems to be functioning at a different frequency, which is also a positive for the Indian side. But overall, it's been an unconvincing performance from them as a batting unit because if Harmanpreet Kaur has to stitch those important partnerships in all games, then it does ask questions of the other batters. Yes, Harman can play the anchor role, which he has done with aplomb throughout this tour, but you would expect the top order to chip in. And the way Harleen they all two performed, today, you would have expected her to have made sure that she was able to seal the deal without letting the other batters, the lower order batters, come in and play the kind of innings they do. So that did not happen despite those partnerships worth 60 odd runs, which came at a fair clip. It came at over 6 runs for over from Harleen Diop and Harmanpreet Kaur. But overall, if you look at it, it would come across as though India are not sure of the kind of batting they want to put out there, the brand of batting they want to display as a new look team.
Certainly, and as you rightly mentioned about Harleen Deol, we saw that she had to come in early today. because those two quick wickets in the form of Smriti Mandhana and Yastika Bhatia, of course, Inoka Ranavira giving us those breakthroughs for Sri Lanka. She strike. But if you have to talk about Harleen Deol, do you think Thirush, her batting position, that's number 5 that she came in today, it was an ideal opportunity for her to come and take the responsibility for the team, because she wasn't a part of the Indian side for the T20Is, and then she was included in the ODI setup. And probably if the top order would have strike today, they would have went for runs, then probably we wouldn't have seen that kind of a knock coming in from her. It was a patient knock, a very important one. And do you think her cementing her place at that position for Indian side?
Oh, well, I think a lot of players play in the sport that they generally don't play even in their domestic teams. For instance, we see Deepti, who bats very low down the order, like number 8, but certainly would be batting much upper in the upper top order in her domestic team. Or probably you would also see Pooja Vastrakar, who's come at number 8 or 9, will obviously will be playing in a much higher when it comes to her batting. So in terms of the potential, I really don't think there's a doubt about the whole equation. But what is the highlight about the Harleens batting is she's absorbed the kind of responsibility that was thrown to her. We've seen her bat at opening, and then we've seen her bat at number 3. But a new role was assigned to her where she had to bat at number 5. And incidentally, we've also noticed Jemima also doing well at number 5 and again in the T20s, and again Harleen doing well at number 5 in the ODI. So it's a good thing that players are able to cement their place when it comes to the number 5 spot. But the area certainly will again circle back to the situation where the top orders like the number 3 and your openers who you'd expect to play longer innings are getting out is the reason why we are having our middle orders to come in and bat. Yeah, that could be something the management will have a lot of introspection to do about.
Yeah, and that number 5 spot is kind of becoming a very interesting topic to discuss about. How impressed were you with Harleen Deol's innings, Onisha? Because probably the highlight of her innings was we saw her taking those singles and doubles. She was rotating the strike well. There were less dot balls, and she stood there calmly with Harmanpreet Kaur. Harmanpreet Kaur took enough time because she knew that there wasn't a big total on the board, but they couldn't afford to lose any more wickets when the partnership was building between them.
Yeah, Harmanpreet seems to have started taking her ODI captaincy quite too seriously, because she understands what Mithali Raj used to do in this batting lineup for over 20 years, and she too seems to be following in her footsteps well and truly, because she realized during the course of the T20 leg of the tour that the runs were not coming the way they should have come from the other senior batters. So she ensured that she took the responsibility to get them as close to the target as possible, which is exactly what she did. Played minimal risk cricket in terms of her stroke play. Found was able to bring out a few strokes which you see an on-song Harmanpreet who is completely at peace here and with the bat, especially that late cut she played against Inoka Ranavira, if I'm not mistaken. Those are trademark Harmanpreet shots which have dried up over the course of the years, especially given her inconsistency as a batter. It is good to see her being able to find those strokes, and the kind of running between the wickets we saw from the two Harrys, Harry Senior and Harry Junior. It spoke to the fact that here are two immensely fit athletes who knew that they could not go on the back foot or take the match situation for granted, because at no point did the asking rate seem threatening. But for them, it was crucial to make sure that there was this partnership which stemmed the momentum in their favor and not so much of their opponents. So that's exactly what the two Harrys were able to do. But again, I'm pretty sure both of them would be disappointed that unlike, say, the likes of Beth Mooney and Talia Magra, when they come in, when the Mac Mooney pair teams up, they ensure that they take Australia over the line. So the Indian lineup as a unit need to find those players and need to inculcate that thinking within the personnel, that once you're out there, once you get the start, you have to convert them into significant knocks which see the end of the chase and not put undue pressure on the rest of the lineup. So much as I would credit Harleen and Harmanpreet to have seen the best part of this chase out, they should have taken the responsibility collaboratively to have also, completed the chase without India showing up further creases in their batting lineup.
Yeah, definitely. And she just fell a few runs short of her half century today, Harmanpreets Kaur playing the captain's innings there. And she also achieved a milestone there, completing 3,000 ODI runs. Only the second Indian to do so. And that's where we see her contributions to Indian cricket has been immense. And her innings today as well, Thirush, if we look at her innings, do you think it is a good lesson for the youngsters who are watching her that it's not always necessary to go there and hit the ball, first ball itself for a big hit or something? You have to just give yourself enough time because, mind you, that the conditions weren't looking very favorable for batting. It was looking a little bit difficult. The ball was getting a good turn there. And the kind of innings we saw from Harmanpreet Kaur today, do you think it's something that the youngsters sitting back at home would get inspired from and would be a great learning for them?
Indeed, Harman by herself has understood the kind of innings that she has to play, and also I've loved the fact that she's able to adapt her batting according to the situation. When you can also expect like a knock like 171 from her, and the other the contrast, when there are two quick wickets, somebody who can take the responsibility and anchor the innings and play longer. So that is what talks a lot about the kind of class that she possesses, because that's what when you mention world class cricketer, and that's exact definition of what it is. Because as a cricketer, one as a batter especially, one has to understand, evaluate the situation, and evaluate the need of the hour and bat accordingly. So certainly Harman has done a very has played a very important role in enabling India to be in a very sustainable position up until this point. And all credits to also Harleen Diol to have had a good partnership, and that like Anisha mentioned, the running between the wickets did really help India to get to I mean, left very few for the other batters to come in and chip in. So I really am happy with both Harry's doing a good job for the Indian team at the middle order.
Definitely. Both Harrys at the middle order have made all the Indian fans happy there with India securing that first win. But we also need to talk about Deepti Sharma. Earlier in the first innings with the ball, she picked up 3 wickets. Today, she was not out at one end, knew the importance of her wicket, and that tells us that her importance in the Indian side is with both the bat and the ball is much higher. And every single time when she comes in and contributes with both bat and ball, it tells us that she's an important asset for Team India, isn't it, Anisha?
Yeah, and especially kind of the uncertainty that has enveloped her batting role since that 188 odd run she scored in a record partnership with Poonam Rawat. I think you've got to applaud, the kind of versatility or the adaptability she's shown as a batter, because today as well, coming as low as in the lower middle order, she was able to string together that 38 run unbeaten partnership with Pooja Vastrakar. So here is a senior player who we know has had experience in the top overseas league in the world, which is why she remains one of the most sought after names. She was given a late inclusion to the draft of the 100 this year. Earlier, it was just Smriti Mandana and Jemima Rodriguez. So you could sense there is demand for this all-rounder in Deepti Sharma when it comes to limited overs cricket. And today again, she proved that she can and is and will continue to be a key asset to the Indian lineup for a long time. The captaincy has done a lot of good to her confidence as an overall cricketer who, burst onto the scene as with her most of her teammates, quite young, and has come through the ranks, is part of the top contracts tier as well in the BCCI contracts roster. So I'm not surprised that Deepti Sharma put her in whatever situation, literally throw her in whatever situation. She keeps delivering the goods. The wickets, mind you, that was a key missing facet to her game in the recent past, and she can heave a sigh of relief that not only did she pick up a couple of wickets, but it was a crucial 3-4 that she ended up with. So looking forward, looking ahead to the series, the remainder of the two games, I think Deepti Sharma is going to grow much more in confidence now that she's shifted with both bat and ball. And with the kind of arm she has, she can literally effect a run out even from as far back as Agra playing in Sri Lanka. So here's looking forward to Deepti Sharma continuing to grow into the all-rounder she is and taking greater responsibility as a part of the leadership group as well.
Yeah, and of course, Deepti Sharma, owing to her all-round performance in today's game, is also awarded as the player of the match, and rightly so, deservingly so. But if speaking of Sri Lanka's bowling unit, yet again we are at that position that we are speaking of Koshadi Ranasinghe and Inoka Ranavira. We've been doing that since long, and probably now we have to look for some other words in the dictionary to actually find out that what adjectives are we going to use for them, because they have been such great assets for the side, contributing in every single game. Let's just first talk about Inoka Ranavira. 4 wickets, 4 important wickets. Probably, if we say that Sri Lanka didn't let it be a cakewalk for India and had the total was 200 or something, Sri Lanka was still very much in the game, Thirush. And a special performance today from Inoka Ranavira tells you that Sri Lanka has the bowling abilities. It's just the batting that is probably letting them down a little bit.
Certainly, Enoka Ranavira has a lot of experience under her belt, and indeed has been time and again performing. Like how we talk about Harman's contribution in the Indian team, we should also mention about the Enoka Ranavira's consistency, because as a player, it's very important to be consistent. There's a lot of dependability goes onto the kind of bowler that she is. So time and again, it's happy to see that she is being very consistent and giving a lot of threats to the Indian batters. Every time you see Enoko Ranavira coming into bowl, the Indian batters are not taking it all that light. So that's the kind of competition that you'd want to see. And also Oshadi Ranasinghe, a bowler bowling in the new ball, especially in a power play, shows a lot of confidence. And also she's carrying the form from the Pakistan. And again, she's been extremely consistent. So it's good to see that apart from Chamari Attapattu, they have some players who they can bank on, and good to see the way that Sri Lanka is evolving as a team.
Yeah, and consistency, as you said, that's the key factor. And of course, as you said, that Inoka Ranavira is posing serious threats to the Indian batters. But it's Soshadi Ranasinghe, as you rightly mentioned, that she has been supporting her really well. How would you sum up Sri Lanka's bowling in today's match, Annesha? Because it was quite challenging for Indian batters to face the spinners.
Absolutely. I think the mental scars that the duo of Inoka Ranavira and Oshadi Ranasinghe are inflicting on India, it's going to keep them company for a long time, the Indian batters, I mean, because if you look at the way Smriti Mandhana has gotten out, she has gotten out to Oshadi Ranasinghe alone so many times. So it's become a foregone conclusion of sorts that come the next India-Sri Lanka match, it's going to be a contest between Smriti Mandhana and the finger spinner, and the finger spinner ends up winning it, whether it be Inoka Ranavira or Oshadi Ranasinghe. So that's a big psychological impact the spinners are having on the Indian batters, it seems. Otherwise, not much explains what's ailing the Indian batting lineup at the moment, or the inconsistency and the fragility that they are displaying at the moment. So the two seniors have done really well, and Inoka Ranavira was obviously the star of the Sri Lankan bowling attack today. The way she struck or operated in the overs between the 25th over and the 30th over was outstanding. She pegged India back with those three quick strikes. First up, Harmanpreets in the 24th over, I beg your pardon, the 26th over, followed by Harleens, and then Ghosh fell cheaply. So here was a spinner who was able to elicit a lot of turn, but it's credit to her experience and skill sets as well, because she was able to get immense turn away from the right-hander, and she was able to utilize the conditions really well. And it just goes on to show how potent the Sri Lankan spin attack can be on any given day if the conditions are anywhere close to spin friendly. And just going by how India have performed, I don't think they'll be able to come out of the horror inflicted by the Sri Lankan spinners anytime soon, maybe in the next two matches as well, unless they really shrug off the hesitancy. The Indian batters will continue to struggle against this particular duo of Oshadi Ranasinghe and Inoka Ranavira.
Well, sure. And let's have a look at the bowling scorecard of Sri Lanka. The bowlers did try their best. They had just 172 runs to defend, but there was a good effort coming in from there. And as you see the scorecard, you'll see those two names. for Sri Lanka, who've been performing since really long now. Shadi Ranasinghe with 2 wickets, and those were 2 important wickets of Yastika Bhatia and Smriti Mandhana. And then Inoka Ranavira with 4 wickets. Both were quite economical with the ball. And Rashmi Silva, of course, was making her debut for Sri Lanka today. But if you have to talk about the Sri Lankan wicketkeeper today, she too was impressive in today's match because behind the stumps we saw that she completed a very good catch of Richa Ghosh, and her keeping, especially against the spinners, was impressive today. What are your thoughts on that, Thirush?
We're talking about Anushka. She has been impressive because when you want your spinners to be very effective on a turning track, you need your spinner, and it's more like a backbone for the spinners, and that's exactly what Anushka has done today. Her glove work has been impeccable, and she has been no doubt she's been collecting. Especially, it's very difficult to be very consistent and very clean on a turning track. So all kudos to the way that Anushka has been bowling, and that is also directly or indirectly reflecting the performance that Inoka Ranavira and Oshadi, or any bowler for that matter, are being able to depict. So a lot of positives is one of the positive is her keeping today.
That was one other positive from the Sri Lankan setup. So India won the first ODI, but now for taking our attention towards the second game, which is to be played on 4th of July, that's on Monday. So what can be the possible changes, or what can be the matchups for this game? Let's just discuss a little bit about that. We've seen that India have been finding ways to win matches, but they haven't done it in a very convincing manner yet. So, Anisha, heading into the second ODI, do you think Team India will think of making any changes? Because probably they would not as well, because Harmanpreets Kaur will become even happier captain if India happens to win the second ODI, because then she'll have those both series win in her cabinet. So, how do you think India approaching this second ODI? Because it's very important for the batting unit to, get there and put some impressive performances. They've performed in patches, but one solid performance from any of those batters would be something that India would be hoping for.
Yeah, I would love for India to resist the temptation of making wholesale changes to this lineup, but I do see at some point, maybe in the third game, if not in the second game, Richa Ghosh, in case she's not able to put in a performance of note in the upcoming game, she might have to make way for potentially an S Meghana, because she has been struggling with a bit of a rough patch. The runs have dried up, and today too, we did not see that confidence she generally exudes. Even if she plays a smallish knock, it's usually impactful and does have a significant bearing on the result. But we are not seeing that body language either. She did not get the glove. So is it acting? Is it playing on the back of her mind that she is no longer being seen as a first choice wicketkeeper, which she was until not so long ago? She had risen through the ranks and had left Tanya Bhatia behind on the pecking order, and that is exactly what Yastika Bhatia seems to have done to her across both formats. So is that playing at the back of her head that needs to be, that's something probably only Richa Ghosh can answer. The other change, or the curious case that we have been investigating on this show, is that of Poonam Yadav. What is up with Poonam Yadav? We need to figure that out, because we've seen how much of a turn these surfaces, whether it be in Dambula or Palakele, are offering their spinners. So I'm pretty sure if Poonam is in the slightest of her elements, she will be quite effective on rank turners like these. So in that case, do we see a Meghna Singh being benched again? Probably that's for Harmanpreet to try out in the third game, should they be able to wrap up the ODI series in the second. But going into the next match, they are 1-0 up in this particular series. The IWC points are up for grabs. They should look to tick all the boxes and field the same 11, so that there is no dearth of confidence on the part of the playing personnel that they fielded today. And they go into the final game, with more freedom and room for them to experiment, so to speak.
Probably a lot of choices is a good headache for skipper Harmanpreet Kaur. Do you think getting in Sabineni Meghna would be a good choice for India, Thirush? Because as rightly mentioned by Onisha, Richa Ghosh hasn't looked at her absolute best. So in this situation, do you think it's good to give a player some space to reflect on their performances and then probably make a stronger comeback?
Well, it's again a very tricky situation because it depends on which player you're trying to bank on and who do you want to bank for longer. We're looking at again Yastika Bhatia, who has turned out to be the wicket keeper, who's technically playing in the spot of Richa Ghosh. Generally, you find Richa Ghosh playing in the spot of the keeper combat. So I think it's a little complicated over here. But talking about Meghna coming in place of Richa. I feel maybe another game could go in for Richa's favor simply because you haven't seen Richa in a good form for a very long time now. You want to She's a very destructive player. We've seen the kind of innings she's been able to display again recently the fastest 50 she holds the record of the fastest 50, so how good of a player she is. But a player like her needs some kind of confidence because she needs to understand the role that is defined to her as a player. So probably another game for Richa Ghosh, and maybe the third game might would want to give Sabineni Meghna an opportunity because she again is a player who has come out with a lot of form and T20 challenge. So many performances are back of her name. So I think it is right that every player gets a right amount of opportunities in terms of and also they should be very clear and should have a clarity about what role they are playing in the team.
And with Yastika Bhatia taking up the wicket-keeping duties, probably India are in a better position to make that change. But it is for all of us to wait and watch what happens. But speaking of Sri Lanka, of course, they have showed that intent when it comes to bowling and fielding. We saw in the first ODI as well. They were behaving as if their fate was depending on every single ball. Their fielding was decent in the first ODI. But the bowling, though, of course, we've been talking about, Karanavira and Oshadi Ranasinghe coming in and giving the team the important breakthroughs. But do you think, Onisha, that the batting unit will have to take that extra responsibility now? It's a high time for them because probably they have the skill set, but it's just the execution of plans that the think tank or the coaches and the management would be making an effort to put things into perspective for Sri Lankan batting unit.
Certainly, the methodology is certainly suspect, but I would also wonder, if you take somebody like Chamari Atapattu out of this 11, not only do you lose the backbone of this batting order, but also the key source of power and pyrotechnics, so to speak. The main problem with this batting lineup, I think, is the fact that is the dearth of power hitters. They do not have anybody beyond Chamari Atapattu to put their hand up on any given day and say that, I'm going to get those quick fire 10, 15 runs. One player, as I mentioned earlier on today's show, is Nilakshi De Silva, but she seems to have completely lost that game or has been asked by the management. We do not know. Probably that, she changed her approach somewhat and takes up more responsibility because their team is losing anyway. So they need to put those runs up before they can, even think of using the long handle. So the power game, the lack of it has been pegging the Sri Lankan team back. How do you address that? Do you go back to the grassroots? They play a lot of their school cricket structures quite robust. That's how we've gotten the likes of Vishnu Gunaratne, Disha Dilhari, mind you. All of them have risen through the ranks starting from that school cricket structure. Do they need to reevaluate how things can be bettered on that front in terms of getting or breeding more power hitters are concerned? The results won't show in the immediate future, but if you look at the 2024 World Cup, 2025 World Cup, for example, the ODI World Cup, that's probably an opportunity where they need to be in a position that they can turn to any direction and be able to find more than just that one power hitter that they have in their ranks, and that's Chamari Atapattu. And in 2025, Chamari Atapattu would be 35, 36, and we don't have to know how an athlete's form can be on the wane or can go up. So that's a key consideration I think Sri Lanka cricket needs to make. They have historically been a slow-scoring side. We've had players, Shripali Verakudi, for example, was there earlier on, but she too is no longer part of the national mix. So what happens to the next generation of power hitters when the women's team is moving ahead at such a rapid pace? If you look at even India, they've been able to unearth the likes of Richa Ghosh, Shefali Verma. Yes, players do have off-color days as well, but these are players who deliver the goods more often than not when it comes to the power hitting factor. So that's a key area of concern that Sri Lanka would look to address for a longer term scenario and not just for this particular series, because it's the start of their IWC campaign for the next cycle, sure, but they need to have the eye on the bigger picture and recruit or scout, or before even scouting, have that talent pool where you can pick out power hitters on any given moment.
Well, that's a concern for Sri Lanka, and it is for all of us to see how they deal with it. But every single match has something riding on it. It has points riding on it for the championship cycle, and Sri Lanka would want to make a strong comeback in the second ODI so as to level the series, and then we could get to the decider. But let's see what happens in the second ODI. This is our experts giving us the preview of the second ODI. But we'll, of course, join you for the pre, mid, and post show of that match as well. But until then, you stay tuned to Women's Cricket Zone for all the updates on women's cricket.
ये पक्का
अब सीख तो गए, अब तो जाने दो मुझे।
ठहर जाइए, कोई प्रॉब्लम वॉब्लम हो गई तो कहाँ ढूंढेंगे आपको?
फैंटेसी अखाड़ा का 24/7 कस्टमर सर्विस है, आपकी प्रॉब्लम सॉल्व करवा देंगे।
कल जाने देंगे।
Fantasy Sports का असली अखाड़ा।
इस गेम में वित्तीय जोखिम के तत्व हैं और इसकी लत लग सकती है। कृपया जिम्मेदारी से और अपने जोखिम पर खेलें।